really the 18.6-year land cycle, all it is really a theory about real estate markets that follows a pattern that they go up for 14 years, then down for 4. Now, that includes a mid-cycle slowdown and also a winner's curse phase just before the crash. Now, this itself is quite heavily supported in markets like the US and America, and that's simply because they're much older markets and they've got much more historical context to them. Now, in Australia, it is very heavily debated, mind you. So there's a lot of people that completely pretty much deny this. There's others that agree with it. But really, within the cycle itself, this is what it means. So really, look, a little bit about it is there's a few key stages of the cycle. So after you've had a major crash, you basically have a thing called the recovery phase. So you can see that in this graph here is years 1 to 7. Now, within that, before you hit the explosive phase, you hit a thing called the mid-cycle dip or mid-cycle slowdown. It's commonly referred to as, especially in Australia, as the mid-cycle slowdown. So after that, then you follow up with a thing called the explosive phase from year 7 to 14. Which by the end sort of stages of that, particularly the last 1 to 2 years, and it's not shown in this graph here, but it is genuinely within the last 1 to 2 years, you've got a thing called the winner's curse phase of the explosive phase of the cycle. Then after that, you enter the recession phase. So that's after the peak of the market. Basically what happens is you go into a phase where the market just returns and it actually has a bit of a correction. Quite common in a lot of major markets to see stuff like that. I mean, in the US particularly, that's why this is very common there. So that's the stages of the cycle anyway. And that's really what the 18.6-year land cycle is. So look, big question that everyone asks, especially in Australia, is, look, is the cycle real itself? Now, where I want to start with is it somewhat is. And why I say that is because without a doubt, if you go into the data, and especially if you go into somewhere like share market economics, who's really the sort of, should I say, theorists of actually making this cycle, they do break it down very well into showing the historical, should I say, cycles of land. And you can see and this goes right back for literally more than 200 years. So you can see on the left here, just public land sales, and that's going right up to literally, post World War I, just before World War II. So you can see how they kind of run in cycles there. And then they even show you after the dollar's taken off the gold standard there, what's kind of going on here. So dollar's taken off the gold standard kind of in the early 70s, so 71 to be exact. And you can see kind of like there, that's in the US, mind you, and you can kind of see there just what's kind of going on, and they're picking out all different parts of the cycle here. So look, I'm not going to be someone who discredits them completely. Like it is, they do have very sound research on what they say and what they're doing. So it is definitely somewhere that something I consider to be somewhat real. Now, the only thing is just in Australia, it is somewhat delayed, these cycles, and I genuinely would tell you it would be probably somewhere between 2 to 3 years, plus or minus either side. Now, markets definitely run in cycles, don't get me wrong, and there's no doubt about that. You can see just in this graph here, property house price cycles, and you can see kind of where it's been slotted in here. Now, it's not true to a T because, you could argue in Australia, yes, they say 2007 was the peak, and then they say 2010's the recovery. To be honest, in Australia, it was 2008 to 2009 where it was. Then it picked straight back up. You could argue also 93 pretty much right through to 97, 98. It was pretty flat pretty much right then. It didn't really do that much. And they're saying the recovery was in 93 here. So look, these numbers are not true to a T, but there's definitely elements of truth to this because it does run in a cycle without a doubt. Now, what I'd say though is with that, just to show everyone a little bit more data to give everyone an idea of this actually having quite a bit of merit, I'll tell you right now. So this has been written about from these guys for years and years and years and years. They haven't made this stuff up pretty much overnight. It's been written about for a long time. These market curves have been spoken about for a long time, and this is an actual graph of where they're predicting things to kind of go. So you can see here, to give everyone an idea, the extreme low prices there are kind of in the darker orange on the years. The solid prices breakout is in the light green. Then you have the minor panic bottom, which is the mid-cycle slowdown. your stock prices going up basically there are, which is your explosive phase, are in the yellow. Your light orange is when it starts to panic. And then basically there, what then happens is you sell off, well, not you sell off, sorry. You have a minor panic, then you have the bottom of the market, the slowdown. So sorry, this is still in the explosive phase. And then you've got also the real estate top in the dark red, then the actual very top in the actual light blue kind of color, so the aquarry kind of color. Now, if you just want to dot your I's over some of this, so you can see here they've done pretty much a 1989 peak, a 2007 peak, then they've got a 2026 peak here. Now, to the American market, that is actually fairly accurate, and also the actual extreme lows are also fairly accurate. They're quite close to it. The mid-cycle slowdowns as well are also quite close to it. So I will give credit to this where it's due. It is very, very insane that they're getting numbers out like this that are even if you're within of markets for like 20 plus years, and this is like 50 years of data, mind you, to be accurate within a couple of years is pretty insane. It is pretty much incredible that they've got stuff out like this. So there's definitely merit to that. What I'd say about the Australian market to relate it to the Australian market is that we don't exactly correlate with the US for a number of reasons. I will get into that shortly, but you'll see just, with some of these like lows and some of these, peaks, to have 2007.85, that is really hitting 2007, 2008. So, really that is showing that it's very close to what happened in Australia. This is almost to a T in America that, even if you think of the mid-cycle sort of slowdown, should I say, being right from, I'd say, your 2020s to 2021 or 2018, really there. COVID kind of happened around that period. And you could even argue before COVID, there were markets that were excellent buys in that period and, did definitely show that. You could also argue the same kind of even in probably some parts of the 90s. So especially, I'd say probably your 1990, probably 7 or 8, where it picked up in certain markets in Australia very well. Definitely applicable. I'd say it's definitely applicable. It's just a few years out. And it's also not, it's depicting a macro market rather than a city market. So mind you, this is what they intended to do. So I'm not going to give them shit for that. It's pretty good. It is fucking pretty good, to be honest. Sorry for this French. To give you an idea, it is pretty good. What they're doing here is good. So, look, the only thing about Australia is it's very, very different. Now, there's a lot of reasons why it's very different, and I've tried to list just, not everyone's going to read these, and that's fine, but for people that do want to read these and go into it, these are all different reasons, and you can add probably 50 more as to why the Australian market is different. There's 3 key areas. So there's policies that increase demand, policies that constrain supply, and then government approaches and their impact. So just to give you an idea, some of the policies that increase demand: first home buyer grants and schemes, 5% deposit schemes, 1, low interest rates, government-backed incentives, guarantees, cheaper money, high immigration rates, growing population, lack of social housing, reduced government-built supply and social housing. All of that is true. Policies that constrain supply, restrictions on land release zoning, limited availability and restrictive zoning laws, over-regulations, taxes on construction, strict building regulations, compliance, infrastructure costs for developers, and governments literally shifting costs onto other people and for new housing. That's all policies that constrain supply. Government approaches and the impact. Look, focus on more money in the market, plans to inject more money, insufficient action on social housing, historic decline in social housing, political influence of homeowners, policies that benefit homeowners. All of these are things that are entrenched within the Australian society and the Australian market. Now, it's very much so an establishment kind of driven kind of thing in Australia, and it's government backed. So I know I spoke about previously basically what kind of, in Australia, should I say, is going on and why it can't really go down because of what's happening. And a perfect example is a government intervention and their approaches, as I mentioned here, and I haven't even mentioned that in this. You could add us, as I said, 50 more things to this. You could add shitloads more to this. But anyway, what I'd say here is look at the 5% deposit scheme. The government is about to be the biggest underwriter in lenders' mortgage insurance in the country. They're basically about to be the biggest underwriter. Now, as I said to you previously, when a government gives something out, they can never take it back. For those that don't believe me, read a book called The Toxic Charity, and it's about stages of entitlement and basically that people become dependent on entitlement. So the reason the government can't take that back is because once the government gives it out, if they take it back, they become the enemy of the people, hence they lose votes. So as of literally in a couple of days' time, I kid you not, they are literally going to become the largest underwriter in the market, and they cannot reverse that, because if they do, they will lose votes and hence lose the election, which is not what governments do. So Australia is a very different market to other markets. Don't get me wrong, it's not necessarily for the best of everything, but it's just the truth. And knowing this, you know how to move. It's as simple as that. So look, as I said to you, this 18.6-year cycle, give credit to it, is very, very good. It is done with great context and all that kind of thing. Just look at how the market, micro markets within markets, so it's not the whole Australian market. Look at cities, look at suburbs, and also look at Australia as a whole and what policies are in it. It's not the same as US or UK market. It's very different. So just keep that in mind when looking at the 18.6-year land cycle.